So what are the multiple mini interviews and how do you go about handling them? And how do you go about handling a group or panel interview? Okay, well, let's talk first about the MMI, the multiple mini interview. I think I remember seeing in a recent Grey's Anatomy episode, the residents were going in for their final oral evaluations in order to become finally licensed as physicians. And so you saw them all in a hallway in this hotel, standing outside the door, and then a bell would ring and they would all go inside the door, inside the hotel room, sit down, and then they'd be asked questions by their interviewer. And so the MMI is a bit like that format, where you typically have 10 minutes or so to respond to a specific question that's presented to you. And sometimes the question is given to you by the interviewer. Sometimes the question is posted on the door, so you have like a 2-minute window to think about your answer and then step in. Okay, so the benefit of this format is it gets rid of all the icebreakers. Just we're going to do away with it. Icebreakers, for this particular format aren't necessary. So we're just going to go straight to the question, which means it also gets rid of potential interviewer bias. So that's, I guess, good for the, some sort of objectivity in the interview process. From your part, you get to use the all-purpose answer structure back from video 10 as you start your answer to your question. So you want to, format your answer in that outline and deliver your answer in a way that shows some comprehensive thought process and that you're not just, giving one specific answer and stopping. You're going to find on this page a link to some sample practice questions regarding the MMI, and I really recommend that you get a stopwatch or some way of timing yourself and practice delivering kind of a rapid fire answer to any of these questions using the all-purpose answer structure from video 10. Okay, so now we'll move on to the panel interview. So the panel interview is pretty much the same as a regular interview in that you're still in a regular interview format. You may get icebreaker questions and so forth. However, what's different is there will probably be 2, maybe more interviewers, and sometimes 2 or more students. Furthermore, you may discover that one of the panelists is a very sort of a warm person, connecting to you and smiling and making eye contact and engaging. And another interviewer might be a disconnected person, doesn't really make any eye contact, kind of ignoring you, making notes, sort of disregarding you. So what you want to do in the panel interview is engage and be inclusive. So that means that if one of the interviewers asks you a question and you proceed to answer it, and let's say it's a disconnected interviewer who asks you the question, and that interviewer then breaks eye contact with you and goes off and does something else or writes something out, you switch to the other interviewer and you keep answering your question, and just don't let it bother you. You just keep going. You don't want to be feel as though you've been interrupted in any way. It's perfectly normal and natural. Inclusive also means that should you have other students in the interview with you, that you want to talk with them and look at them as well as talking to and looking at the interviewers. So if there's another student in the room with you and that student answers a question, and then you're asked the same question right away, I want you to include that other student's answers. So if you agree with part of what the other interviewee said, you say, I agree with what, in this case, Bob is the other student. I agree with what Bob said, and blah, 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 blah. You expand your answer while you're being inclusive. So there's no point here for you in disagreeing with another student. In other words, this isn't Model UN. It's not a debate team. So you want to be inclusive. You want to be agreeable and nice and compassionate and have empathy, and you really want to be listening for what the other person, no matter who it is saying. So I think that's one of the subtle differences in a panel interview, is being inclusive and, showing that you're considering the other people in the room independent of their supposed status. I think really shows your compassion very favorably, and it's something that you're going to want to do during the panel interview. Now, if another student says something that's totally wrong, you don't have to agree with them, but you don't have to point out their error either. You just sort of ignore that piece, maybe move on to your own answer to the question separately. Perfectly fine to do. But I think the big takeaway for the panel interview is the sense of engagement and inclusion, including the interviewers, including the other interviewees, into the conversation, so that it's not just you, sitting frozen in lockstep with one person, spitting out an answer to that person and pretending like nobody else exists.